Stand by for Stu's show, coming up next. And now, here's the host of Stu's show, Stu Shostak.
We probably should mention at this point, we can go out of order here a little bit, but that's where Max Fleischer ended up after his studio got taken over by Paramount,
That's right.
He became an animator at Jam Handy in the late 40s.
Well, he wasn't an animator. He was brought in as a department head.
Of the animation
right.
department.
And because of his status, it brought a great deal of sales credibility to the company by having him there.
And he did produce the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer cartoon that came out in, 47?
And well, he directed it. Mm-hmm. But that's sort of a latter-day accomplishment. The work that he did before that is a little more obscure because a lot of it was secret work that he was doing for government contracts. The two reasons why he was brought there after the loss of the studio was, again, because of the status of his history in the development of animation, but also the Handy organization wanted him for his research abilities.
Okay.
And so he had a hand in developing some optical sighting systems for the Army Air Corps.
And that would make the connection as to why you met him, because he still had an ongoing relationship with the company at
He had an
point.
ongoing relationship with some of the remaining people there, Frank Goldman being one of them.
Right.
And he and Frank were friends 50 years before that. There was a reorganization of Fleischer's studio around 1929. And so for 1 year they moved out of 1600 Broadway. And Frank gave him space over at Carpenter Goldman Labs, which was his company, in Queens, while they reorganized Fleischer's studio. And that happened just when the sound era came in. So that period, 1929, 1930,
okay.
And then sometime in late 31, they moved back to 1600 Broadway.
Yeah.
And they reorganized as Fleischer Studios Incorporated.
And what were they called prior to that?
Out of the Inkwell Films Incorporated.
That's right. That's who you've named your business after then in
a rough sense.
Yeah. Fleischer's background, he went to trade school. He didn't start out to be an animation or an artist, right? An animator and artist.
That's
Very
right.
quickly, talk about his early days.
Well, he came out primarily of the cartoonist circles, and he was primarily a very revered commercial illustrator. And his getting into animation was completely accidental. In fact, a lot of his triumphs were accidental and not necessarily intended. Even getting into developing the rotoscope was not originally his idea, but suggested by his boss at Popular Science.
And what was the rotoscope? What did that do?
That was a means of what we would now consider motion study. And the basic problem was that early animated cartoons, other than the ones that Winsor McCay produced and spent a lot of time producing, were very jerky and hard to look at and very non-lifelike. And so the rotoscope was a means of capturing live action you shoot live action as a means of study, and essentially you're tracing it. But it also became a tool not only just to as a crutch for animating, but it was also a reference tool for making composites. So if you're going to have Coco come over Max's shoulder by having the footage, you have an exact area where you can make the match line and then make it fit.
That would combine animation with live action.
Right.
Did he invent the rotoscope? How did that come about?
Well, we have to be clear about exactly what inventing and what a process is. And it was a machine that made this process possible. But you cannot put a patent on a nebulous idea. A patent is only good for the device that makes it possible.
Right.
And so his particular device was a projector on an inclined board that projected an image through an opening onto a glass pane of an easel. It was a combination of an inclined easel and drawing board.
Got it.
And that was his first application of a rotoscope. But you can do the same thing by projecting the film in any other configuration, accomplish the same thing.
Okay.
The interesting thing is that there is no reference to the term rotoscope in the original patent application.
Wow. So, Max, his first cartoons, did he work for the Bray Studios? Is that when he got his start?
That's right.
When Bray shut down, that's when Fleischer started his Inkwell productions.
Well, Bray didn't completely shut down. They started to consolidate some of their departments, and they started to get out of theatrical production. Mm-hmm. Although Walter Lantz came over there and continued their theatrical cartoon division until the end of the 20s, and then they completely got out of that altogether. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the major pioneers, including Paul Terry, had gone through there, and they all pretty much left around the same time. Terry had left a little bit earlier. He was there 1 year. And fortunately for those people, they did not have the contractual binds that you would have today, where when you create a character for this series, for this company, that they own your character. These guys were able to take their characters and go in their own ways.
And that's what Max did.
That's what Max did.
Did Max have that Coco character prior to Inkwell Productions, or did he just do generic cartoons for Bray?
Well, actually, Out of the Inkwell did not officially get started in production until 1918. The first one started to come out just as we got into 1919. But Max was there as early as 1916. And the start of the series was delayed by World War I. And so he was placed in charge of doing training films for the Army.
Even back then they did training films for World War I. I did not know that either. And you're live on Shokus Internet Radio. Hello.
Hi, this is Tom Stathis.
Hi, Tom. Where are you calling from?
Flushing, New York.
Tommy,
New York.
I finally hear from you.
Oh, is this an acquaintance of yours?
Well, he's almost like a protege to me.
Oh, very good. What's your question, if you already know Ray, Tom?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Let me first second everything that has been said about Ray's DVD work. Wonderful and fantastic. And it's just fabulous that someone else is out there saving early animation history.
Absolutely, and in such fine condition, too. I mean, he painstakingly restores this stuff. It is beautiful. It puts my stuff to shame. Go ahead.
Anyway, I'm sorry to jump ahead at all, but in terms of Fleischer and Bray, what, if any, connection did the two have in the 50s?
Well, Max's career came full circle in the fact that after he left Handy's primarily to pursue that lawsuit with Paramount, which he won in 1955.
And that was the lawsuit that
over the sale of the cartoons
to television.
That was such a complicated deal based on contents of the contract.
And he won it because his name was left off on some of those reissued titles?
That was the basic technicality.
The technicality was when AAP and UM&M slapped those new titles over to...
It was in violation of the original contract.
And that's how he won it.
So that's how he won on that technicality.
Do you know what he was paid?
It was around $2,750,000.
Oh, good for him! I love it when the little guy whips the big guys like that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, they were sold for some $1 million.
Well, so half of it went to Max. Then that's great.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So what was the connection?
So his returning to Bray was because they were old-time friends, and actually it was Bray who recommended him for his commercial art job that sent him to Boston for 2 years. Bray was a little bit older than Max, and actually Max was something of an office boy to Bray when he was a cartoonist at the Brooklyn Eagle. So that's really what it all amounts to.
There you go. All right, Tom. Thanks for calling in. Bye-bye. We are now at the point where he forms...
The Inkwell Studios.
Out
of the Inkwell Films Incorporated was his
Out of
company.
the Inkwell, yeah, okay.
Now, that came in 1921. That's when he went into business with his brother Dave. Now, Dave worked at Bray doing menial work, like in the dark room, and he would do the annex for the Clown, for rotoscoping and so forth. And the Clown didn't have a name yet. It was just the Clown.
The Clown.
Right. That didn't happen until 2 years into forming their own studio. Now, how they went into business together was that Dave won a large amount of money on a horse race. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't realize, but these were actual Damon Runyon people. They were sort of like nouveau riche people who did not go very far in school. They had trade school educations at the most. But their success was due to just an inherent ability without formal training. And I think that's something for us to reassess these days, because I think people place too much emphasis on education, thinking that it's a mechanical process where you sit through passively and you suddenly become something. You do not teach talent. You're born with it.
That's right. I agree with you. People say, I want to learn how to act. If you've got the ability, you can enhance it. But if you don't have the ability, you cannot be taught. I will argue with anybody.
That's right.
All right. You're live on Shokus Internet Radio. Hello.
Howdy.
Some people know me as Jack Spitz. Some people know me as Bill Field.
I know who that is.
Say, Ray, you're awesome.
We know you as one of the most loyal listeners to Shokus Internet Radio. Welcome back, Bill, from San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, yes, Bill
Right.
Fields. I wish I were in Philadelphia.
Oh,
He loves you, Bill. He's just pulling your leg. Go ahead.
not WC, but hey, that's okay.
Go ahead.
No, what I wanted to say was, what do you think, Ray? You're more equipped to answer this than anyone else I can think of. What do you think Max's main contribution was besides his animated films? Would you say it was rotoscoping? Would you say it was any of the, number of contraptions he came up with to get the animation right? Or what would you say, other than the films themselves, his greatest contribution was to animation?
Stereo optic, maybe?
Well, I think you pretty much covered all of those things because, yes, he was a pioneer, and when these things started, nothing existed. So you had to invent everything. And everything that was in their studio was developed by him, right down to the cameras. Now, seeing them, they weren't as efficient as what later models would have been, but you've got to keep in mind that when these things started out, the equipment didn't exist and you had to invent it. Even right down to his very first things that he ever did experimentally, he rented a camera and it didn't have a proper shutter, and so every time he advanced the film to make an exposure, he had to keep capping and uncapping the lens for each exposure. There was no such thing as an animation camera with a controlled shutter and all that sort of thing. All these things had to be figured out. And that's another thing to his credit that a lot of people don't understand.
Far above and beyond what Disney was. I mean, not to sell Disney short for what he did. I'm just saying Max is almost like an Einstein of animation in a sense because of all his contributions. And he was technically and mechanically and artistically inclined in such a way that you think of almost a Frank Lloyd Wright or someone of that caliber as far as what he was able to do. Have a great night, Ray. Thanks for all your contributions.
Thanks for
Okay,
calling,
Bill, we appreciate the phone call as always. It's great to hear from you. Thanks for calling.
You are now listening to a talking moving picture.
He hooked up with Lee DeForest,
Right.
who is a man who invented sound on film, and the studio heads and the theater people were not savvy enough to go with what would eventually become the norm. So let's talk about this innovation, sound on film, that Lee DeForest created and how Max linked up with him and believed in that.
Right.
And then we're going to be out of time, so go.
Well, first of all, it's a matter of timing. And DeForest launched this new technology too soon, simply because it came at a time when the film industry was just building up after the First World War, and the studio system was just in its infancy where they were starting to acquire theaters. So when you think of it from an economic standpoint, when they're already trying to build on an economic structure that's based on silent films, why did they want to be burdened with yet another technological change when they're just getting started? Because the biggest change that occurred at this time was motorized cameras and projectors.
Right, and this style of film that Lee DeForest developed, this sound on film, you had to have a special projector, right? The projectors that were running silent films could not pick up this optical track, right?
Well, you had to have the reproduction equipment on that.
You had to have the camera equipment, the sound equipment, and the projector.
Well, it could be adapted to existing projectors, but this was the same thing even with Fleischer, and the fact that this is something that didn't exist before, so if it didn't exist, you've got to invent it. And then, too, there were limited theaters. The equipment had to be installed and so forth. So how they came together was that they had a company called Red Seal. And this was the partnership of theater magnate Hugo Riesenfeld, Max Fleischer, and Lee DeForest. And there was a chain of 36 theaters on the East Coast, and they continued expanding until about 1927, and they not got any further than Cleveland, Ohio, when the company went broke, just on the very verge of the talkie transition. But there they had the basic technology, which the industry ended up adapting on full scale within 3 years. This was not sound on disc, this was sound on film.
And Max Fleischer did how many cartoons with Lee DeForest? That's where the Follow the Bouncing Ball cartoon started.
Well, there were 36 song cartoons that were made between 25 and 27, and out of those, 19 of them were made as sound on film.
Has anybody here seen Kelly?
and incredible, and you're live on Showcase Internet Radio. Hi.
Hi, this is David from Florida.
Hello. Oh, it's our Air Force buddy. How you doing, David?
I'm fine. How are you this fine evening?
Good. What's your question for Ray tonight?
Well, I just wanted to ask, since I've read his posts on Jerry Beck's forum and on the Toon Zone forum about the history of the Fleischers and all that. And
For how long have you been reading that? I've been posting those for years.
I've read them for as long as I've been a member. That's been a while.
Okay.
But do you think you would ever write a book about all this? Since you seem to be incredibly knowledgeable about all this, and I know those internet postings, they might not last forever. And I think, especially when you get into the later years of the Fleischer studio and the possibility of some kind of dirty pool on the part of Paramount and the takeover of the studio.
Yeah, we're hopefully going to get to that. Let me tell you something, David, before Ray ponders the answer. Ray did a 90-minute documentary on the Fleischer studio that has never been released, and he gave me a rough cut of it, and it is fabulous. And I am going to second what David says. Have you thought about doing a book? There have been a couple of books out.
So I read the Leslie Cabarga one, but, once it got into towards the end, it kind of glossed over a lot of stuff. It said, Paramount took over the studio in 1942 in a move that was possibly illegal, and that was it.
Look at the acknowledgments.
But
So to partially answer your question, that's one of the reasons why there are certain things in certain chapters and why at a certain point some of the information starts to get watered down.
Oh, is that because you only contributed partly to the book? Is that what you're saying?
Partly that, and partly because there were certain details that just were not, in all fairness, available at that time, or because of that particular point in time, this information could not be released publicly. We've since passed that point.
That's right. And the reason you never pursued this was financial reasons, right? You couldn't.
Oh, I pursued it.
Oh, you did.
I got so far as going to AMC when they were still a good movie channel. That was in June of 2000. And I had my meeting with Alice Peck in New York, and they were all set because I gave them a 30-minute condensed version of it. And they were all set, and they said they were very interested because at that time they were running the Betty Boops and Screen Songs, and it would tie in with their programming. And the following week, AMC was sold,
and she
was gone.
Yeah.
And then we also spent 2 years trying to get it on as an A&E biography piece, and I was doing that through Fleischer Studios. And then they had a change of administration over there, and we got so far as actually having a 2-hour block budget. All the details about the clearances and everything, and it's in turnaround.
Can you put what you've got out through Inkwell Images Inc.?
No.
You cannot?
No, there are too many complications about clip licensing, and a lot of it goes back to music rights. And this is something, if you've been reading those posts, I keep warning people, do not assume that these things are in the public domain, especially from the sound era, because if they used a lot of published music, 95% of the time that music is still under a valid copyright, and there are technicalities that control the master soundtrack rights on that film that sustain the copyright.
Yeah, if you don't write a book, you should be a lawyer, okay? But back to David's question. Have you considered writing a definitive book on the Fleischer Studios?
It comes up every once in a while, but I'm so involved with doing the DVDs that I don't have the time to do it.
So, David, until that happens, you just have to listen to Ray here, because we'll cover everything that he would put in the book here, I'm assuming. All right, David. So just hang in there. Maybe something will come along to push Ray along into doing it, because I think he could certainly do the definitive book, and I think you'll agree with me.
Oh, I do.
Beginning in the 1930s, Popeye the Sailor was a box office champion, more popular than Mickey Mouse. And Betty Boop was the queen of the animated screen. In the 1940s, Superman sent animation soaring to new heights that continue to amaze and inspire. These icons were the product of the great Fleischer Studio and its founder. Now, after 40 years, the full story is told in the exciting new book, The Art and Inventions of Max Fleischer, American animation pioneer. Author Ray Pointer has penned a documentary in book form that has people talking. The Art and Inventions of Max Fleischer, American animation pioneer.